a rookie trooper, and his shoulders shook with pride. He checked all his equipment and made sure his pack was tight. He had to sit and listen to those awful engines roar. You ain't gonna jump no more. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. He ain't gonna jump no more.
Now, there's been a lot of talk online whether the auto rifle concept is real, if it can hurt you, if it's something that's applicable for the average everyday citizen. And those questions kind of go above my pay grade. There's people that have better, more up-to-date information on the topic, like Brass Facts, Red Right Hand, Night Fighters, people like that who are more invested in the concept and who can do a better job of explaining the use case than I can, which is why I'm going to be very grug-brained and stay focused mostly on the product itself, not whether or not it's applicable to you and your budgetary constraints. Are you actually going to be able to train and practice with something like this 1,000 rounds a week, 1,000 rounds a month, whatever it might be, to become proficient and to really utilize it? The auto rifle concept has been around for quite some time. You could say the IAR was kind of the prototype for this sort of thing, and it was used in many conflicts around the world, Rhodesia and other cool places where IARs or something with enhanced capability, so to speak, was sort of the norm. And I think that these things can be extremely effective. However, I think it's also a little bit lower on the totem pole than kind of like your general purpose type stuff. And I'm not of the opinion that this should be the standard. Rather, this is just a extra piece of capability that you may or may not want to add to your arsenal. I kind of view it in the same way as night vision and thermal capability. Very important, very cool to have. Also kind of down on the totem pole in terms of important things that you need to be spending your money on. You need to have a lot of other supporting equipment before something like this could even begin to make sense, if it makes sense for you at all.
Full disclosure right up front, I met Cody Red Right Hand at SHOT Show 2024. We hung out, hit it off, we've been talking ever since, and he ended up sending me one of his barrels that he used in his LSW IAR builds for his company, which is of course Red Right Hand, and I've had it for about a year and a half in this system, basically as you see it here in all of its 20-inch AR glory. But the reason that I mentioned that about Cody at the beginning is because I consider him a friend. We talk, run a semi-regular basis, and so this review is both consciously and subconsciously biased, and you need to keep that in mind going forward. I also want to be clear that while this is a Red Right Hand barrel from one of his builds, this does not come with the really cool aluminum heat sink cooling system that comes between the gas block and the barrel, though it does utilize a lot of the same components, and I think you can actually get a build kind of similar to this from him. The barrels themselves are made out of 4150, chambered in 5.56, 1-in-7 twist with a phosphate exterior and a chrome lined interior. Now that is a good manufacturer, those are good coatings. It's a pretty heavy barrel, not a true heavy barrel, but a pretty heavy barrel, if that makes sense. And it is of course 20 inches long, meaning that out of full power M193, you're pushing about 3,300 FPS. Again, that's going to depend on your load a little bit. Something that Cody includes on a lot of his builds for his customers, and I do as well, I think I just put 3 of them together just a few hours ago, are these rifle speed adjustable gas blocks. Essentially, you get multiple plungers, 12 settings, they are externally adjustable, and essentially the best gas block on the market if you're willing to spend about $200-250 on them. Also very important on the rifle speed gas blocks and the Red Right Hand builds is that because they utilize a straight gas tube, it's a little less heat sensitive than a bent gas tube, and he can also put his heat sinks on the gas tube as well as the barrel to try and draw as much heat out as possible. Moving on to the rest of the build, we actually have a Arrow M4E1 upper receiver set. So we have a truly free floated barrel, and we have a handguard that simply mounts to the extension on the upper receiver. Now, while Arrow's quality may be suspect as of late and the rails are a little bit wonky because they are so thick, what that allows is a lot of extra space between the handguard and the barrel. That plus the wrap means that even when you're shooting at higher rates of fire for extended periods of time, and you're combining that with gloves and other PPE, you're not going to accidentally get an impromptu forge mark on your hand. The main downside to the enhanced rails is, again, they are quite a bit thicker. They're over 2 inches thick, which might be a little too girthy for some of you, but it also is a little bit too girthy for some laser aiming modules that you put on the top rail, because there's simply not enough room between the Picatinny rail and the actual rail itself for some laser aiming modules, especially the ones that get really low. The good thing of that is that you get a truly free floated barrel where the barrel nut is actually underneath and the handguard touches the upper receiver. It in no way, shape, or form touches the barrel, so you do get a truly free floated system and some extra airflow since there is so much gap between the barrel itself, which is going to get very hot, and the handguard. A couple interesting parts that I decided to throw into this build is one, the CAC K-Spec down vent carrier. So this is like a sand cutter carrier that has the vents pointed downward, so it's supposed to take all that gas that would escape out the port and maybe back towards you, just throw them down into your magazines and lower receiver, which has caused issues with some problematic magazines, and it also puts all of that back into your fire control unit. And if you're using an FRT that might be a little bit more gunk sensitive than others, maybe not the best idea in the world. And also that gas is still going to leak out through all the holes, so instead of coming out the side, it comes out the back by where the upper and lower receiver meet together next to your face. So I don't know if it actually runs any cleaner, but I've been using it for many thousands of rounds at this point, and I am thoroughly whelmed by its performance. Now, the bolt is actually the Victor Combat Match Bolt, which is supposedly a accuracy enhancing product because it is machined to the highest side of the tolerance possible, meaning that it will have the most repeatable lockup inside your barrel extension and have the least movement possible. So it's supposed to be, one, very durable, and two, very accurate. Now, I can't tell you that it actually increases accuracy, but it has been extremely reliable and the system is extremely accurate, though I think that's more due to the fact that the barrel is truly free floated and it's a pretty heavy, high quality barrel. The charging handle is the Breek Sledgehammer, which has a very tight fit to your upper receiver and a very raised wall, which is again supposed to deflect some of those gases. It all has a port out the side and it has like ridges on the inside to disrupt gas flow. Does it actually help in reducing gas to the face? A little bit, but you combine that maybe with the down vent BCG and with the adjustable gas block up front, and it does about as good as it can. Though it can depend on your can, it may or may not matter all that much depending on what you have stuck at the end of your barrel. Again, as I mentioned, I've been using this for a year and a half or so, almost exclusively in a high rate of fire manner, meaning either binary or simulated maximum semi-auto. I think that's how you phrase that for YouTube, and it's held up extremely well. Reliability has basically been flawless, except for when I'm experimenting with buffers and springs and tuning the gas down as far as I can to minimize that rate of fire, which we'll talk about in just a minute, or when the FRT or accelerator device has an issue, which is not really related to the upper receiver itself. But it does more than just the Bird. It's also quite accurate to boot. I've taken this rifle out to 900 yards using a Night Force 2.5 to 10 supplied by the great Andrew Vachon, and it performed admirably at that distance. And it is a combination of having a 20-inch barrel, which gives you pretty much max velocity, and also being very accurate to boot. Now, with all the rounds that I put through it and all that you guys have seen it over the last year and a half or so, I wanted to do accuracy testing at basically the end of my firing schedule to see how it has held up. And it's kind of, as you would expect, I suppose, very, very good. With regular ball ammo, it's holding about 1 to 1.5 MOA, and with the right load, you can absolutely put up a 10-shot group that gets pretty darn close to 1 MOA. So as far as accuracy goes out of the barrel, I would say it's pretty much as good as you could ask for, given the intended purpose that Cody is putting these into. The raw performance is certainly there. The trade-off is, again, the bulk and the weight of this system, because with it all set up properly at somewhere between 12 and 14 pounds, which is a little bit heavy for a general purpose rifle. However, if you want to use this in a more auto rifle-y role, well, that extra weight is actually a good thing. So now we'll talk about tuning it for a higher rate of fire, because I get a lot of questions about how do you get it to run so slow, and it's a pretty simple combination of gas block, buffers, and springs. So whether it is suppressed or unsuppressed, I have more than enough tuning within the rifle speed adjustable gas block. Currently with an H3 buffer and a Geisley Super 42 spring, and about setting 6 with a YHM Turbo K, because all of that is very important, and decent ball ammo, not necessarily the hottest ball ammo out there, but with decent ball ammo, it's hitting about 600 to 650 RPM, which is absolutely fantastic. Very, very controllable. In its lower rate of fire, it can absolutely hold doubles out to about 200 yards on a reduced size piece of steel, which for me is about as good of accuracy as you're going to need for whatever scenario you cook up in your head. Now, I've used it in other suppressor, unsuppressed, buffer tube combinations, and with that rifle speed adjustable gas block, I can basically tune it however I want, though I would say that the best is a good spring, good buffer combo, whether suppressed or unsuppressed, and then you just adjust the gas as needed. Now, if that is a little bit too slow, if you want to accelerate it, well, then you simply open it up 1 or 2 clicks, and then your rate of fire goes from 600 to 700 to 800, and all the way to the point where you're outrunning the FRTs or whatever it happens to be that you're putting in the system. The one thing that I will say about these FRTs and super safes or whatever it might be, they seem to be very, very bolt velocity dependent, which is going to change whether you swap out your ammo, your suppressor, your buffers, your springs, whatever it might be. So keeping the system as stable as possible is going to lead to the best reliability, because they are just a little bit more finicky and they 100% add a new failure point into the system. So if you like swapping parts all the time, well, you're gonna like tinkering to try and get it to continue to run. Also, just by nature of putting more rounds through it in a shorter period of time, your maintenance cycles are also going to need to be a little bit more aggressive. And by maintenance, I mean make sure that the thing is actually wet with lube, and in certain cases make sure that your FRT is not filled with gunk, although I might have complicated that a little bit by again using the down vent BCG, which I don't really recommend. Not that it's bad per se, it's a perfectly fine BCG, but I just don't think that redirecting and venting all of those gases downwards into your magazine and fire control unit over a long enough period of time is conducive to enhanced reliability when it was meant to vent out the sides and clear any sort of obstructions within the port, which is why AR-15s do so well in like a mud test, where they can clear debris using some of that extra gas coming out the side of the bolt carrier. Is it bad? No, but it's just not personally my favorite, and you're going to be much more successful reducing gas to the face if you simply have a reduced back pressure can or other mitigation systems within the rifle, rather than the very last element of that string being your carrier. But with all that out of the way, that is basically the spiel on the barrel and the setup that I have it in currently. Keep in mind that this is a very biased video, so you should have this come in one ear and then out the other, and that was probably poor phrasing. But with all that out of the way, gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. I will see you in the next one. God bless.
Wow, no way, dude. 4 for 4 on the know your limits. That was just luck.